So I don't know about you, but I really enjoy cooking. And one thing I've learned over the years is cooking and baking are really different. My daughter loves to bake and she likes to cook as well. But with baking, it really requires precise measurements. It requires that you do things in a certain order if you want that dish to come out in a certain way. Now, with cooking, it's a little bit different. Sometimes that matters, but a lot of times you can start with a recipe that is a good base, and then you can kind of add your flavor to it. And one of my go-to recipes that I've cooked for many years is chicken or veal marsala, and it has mushrooms in it. And I often use different types of wine in it, some kind of darker wine, some kind of light wine to kind of tone it down a little bit. Garlic, sometimes onion, sometimes not, etc. But at the end of the day, that's kind of my go-to. I mean, if I really want to serve something that I know people are going to like, as long as they're not vegetarians, then this is my go-to. And each time it comes out a little bit different, but each time I generally get really, really positive reviews on it. Now, the reason I share that story with you is the ZO sales process is a lot like cooking. It's kind of a framework. It gives you a basic recipe for success. And as we go through it, you're going to recognize a lot of these things. You're going to say, yeah, I do that. But maybe you add a little more spice here. Maybe you add a little bit more wine, maybe whatever it is. But we all start with a basic fundamental core recipe, what those core ingredients are. And I know it, right? Any given day, you can throw this dish together. It's going to be exceptional. But I want to challenge you from time to time to say, I am making this for my most important guest. You picture yourself having Dr. Obashi over for dinner. You don't want to leave anything out, any doubts in that this is going to be a great dish. Maybe even practice, right? Maybe you practice cooking it a couple of times using some even more precise measurements. And as we go through the sales playbook, I'd like you to think about that. There are some ingredients in here that you will use sometimes, and sometimes you might leave out. And so I'm packing in all these different ideas, and because I know you have a lot of sales acumen and you kind of know your business partners and specific appointments, it's going to be up to you to use that sales acumen and sales intuition to make sure you either include or exclude certain agreements. And as we go through, it will become pretty apparent. But at any given time, in order for us to deliver the exceptional results, exceptional experiences that we're looking to do here at ZO, it really requires us to really follow that playbook, that sales playbook. So why don't we jump in and review what we've identified as a common language for our sales playbook. So here's the sales process. You may not use these terms, but I'm sure they'll resonate. Before any meeting with a client, whether it's new or a prospect that you're going after, you do some form of pre-meeting planning. Some planning, maybe pulling reports, maybe doing some research on the web, whatever it is, so that way you can show up at your best. When you actually meet with them, whether that's on a Zoom call, some kind of virtual call, or in person, you're going to do the building rapport step. And within building rapport, this encompasses how we're going to get the meeting started off on great footing, right? How it starts is how it goes. So that's things like how we build deliberate rapport, what questions we ask initially just to get things warmed up, how we set a clear agenda to let them know that we have a plan for this meeting, that we're a real professional, we've got credibility. We're also going to talk a little bit about how we might introduce ourselves, or we may talk about how we can build some credibility for ourselves as an account executives, as well as how we can build credibility for the brand, which ZO kind of has a lot of credibility anyway, but it doesn't hurt to build a little bit more on before you jump into the next step, which is once we've done that, set the agenda. Now at this point in time, it's important to do discovery, to make sure this is in, back and forth conversation. And in order for us to make relevant recommendations, ones that they're going to embrace, we've got to do some discovery. We got to diagnose what's going on and do a relevant, deep dive into what's going on. And again, this applies to prospecting as well as an existing account where you might be doing monthly or quarterly business reviews. Once we've done a thorough discovery and we really understand, and even more importantly, they know we understand them, they know that we've been listening. At that point, we've earned the right to provide them a solution, some recommendations. Some of these are tactical, maybe how to roll out a GWP for the next quarter or the next month, or how to begin introducing a specific new product that you want to have them add to their client's regimen. But it's tailoring that solution, both on a tactical level, but then on a broader scale level where you're really just presenting the way to work as a partnership, how you're doing things and telling the ZO story and making it relevant to them. At that point, this can fall anywhere in the sales process, but we just put it here, which is addressing concerns. Through conversations, people have concerns, and sometimes they come out very overtly, and sometimes they are a little bit more guarded. But it's important that we make them feel comfortable. We can draw out those concerns and we can address them, because otherwise we're not going to move forward to the next step, which is kind of part and parcel with addressing concerns, which is closing, right? What's the next step? This can be as formal as, putting together, an order and maybe a new opening order, or maybe a new purchase that's a little bit more significant. It could be as simple as just, putting the next meeting on the calendar, maybe going through and selecting training dates and things like that. But any meeting starts with some pre-meeting planning and it wraps up with some form of closing. And then, of course, after that is follow-up. It's really key to connect one meeting to the next, and we'll go over some techniques on follow-up as well. So in this page is a good reflection page. Take a moment and pause the recording here and answer these questions. And, on the surface, they're pretty simple. At the same time, I'd like you to just take a deep breath, maybe take 2 minutes, maybe at least 90 seconds, get your phone out and time it, right? And slow down and just answer these questions, because I really think it helps us reinforce what the benefit of a process is. All right, I'll talk to you on the other side. I want to just make a comment about this last question here, freedom within a framework. This is a phrase that was shared with me many years ago, and it really made sense because I've been in sales my entire life. In order for me to survive, pay my bills, and put food in the fridge, I've had to sell something. And so often I've seen some of these models that are so rigid, and I look at them, I'm like, that is not going to work. It might work in this one situation one time. But what I've found is with the most accomplished salespeople is that framework to guide them is ideal. And then it allows them to make adjustments, call audibles, use their experience, their understanding of that client to make those adjustments, so you can absolutely nail and maximize your time and your customer's time. So I don't know about you, but hopefully when you look at that sales process, it resonates and it looks pretty similar to what you're currently doing. And if we're all operating using this same framework, it still allows us that autonomy to make some changes based on the situation. So let's jump into the first step, which is pre-meeting planning. Okay, before we jump into pre-meeting planning, at the end of each module, we have a quick summary. Now, this is a very short module. At the same time, we want to provide kind of some cadence as we go along through the course here. And at the end, the debrief questions are very similar. And really what the purpose is, as we've stated in the beginning, is to create a way for you to connect with your coach and to have further conversations where they can share their experience and you can maybe ask questions, share your experience. But when two people like that get together and you have a specific conversation on the topic, it's really going to help make it even richer, more relevant, And we are certain you're going to be even smarter after a conversation like that. So some simple questions. Hey, what caught your attention in the module? What's one topic or idea you can discuss with your sales coach? Maybe in this module, it's like, I like the idea of freedom within a framework. Maybe that caught your attention. Talk about that. And then what's one thing you'll apply in your business immediately? Later today, tomorrow, this week, or your next appointment. And maybe just looking through this process, it made you think about discovery. Like, I know questions to ask, but maybe you're going to think about 4 or 5 questions before the meeting that you'll ask. Maybe that's the idea that got triggered. Maybe it's about being more deliberate about following the process. Maybe you found yourself delivering a solution before you've done a thorough discovery. Maybe that's it. But these are the things we're looking for in the wrap up. So when you connect again with your coach, which might be your regional sales director, your field trainer, whatever, use these things to start and create the conversation on the topic. Now, I'm not kidding you. We're going to get on to pre-meeting planning. So forgive me if I've used this phrase before, but if you don't know where you're going, you're probably going to have trouble getting there, right? And you could get anywhere and maybe be happy with it or maybe unhappy with it. When we talk about pre-call planning, it's about having a deliberate destination in mind for that meeting. And when you plan at a detailed level for each meeting, it's going to allow you to maximize every moment you have with your client, whether that's in person or virtual. And it also demonstrates through the relationship that you are planning, you're preparing, and people are always going to be more willing to meet with you. And it's going to help them be more receptive to your ideas because they know you've done the work. And that's where it comes into pre-call planning. So you might think about it. How well are you pre-call planning right now? What are some things that you're doing that really help you achieve your desired outcome after each meeting? What are some things that you'd like to tighten up on? We're going to dive into this module. We'll share some ideas that we've collected from the field. And as we go through, identify some things that you could apply to your business that can help you be even better. I know, and that sounds crazy, but yeah, I mean it. There's no limit to better. Let's jump in. So from a high level, these are some things that we can keep in mind. Number one on this list is getting your attitude in thinking through the meeting. We all know a better version of ourselves shows up when we just take a couple of minutes. And I fall into this trap where I wing it. Sometimes I have a meeting on my calendar and I'll choose to kind of run right up to that edge and then I'll hop on the call and do the meeting. And you know what? I get to the other side. Sometimes it's great. Sometimes it's okay. Sometimes I look back like, wow, that didn't go the way I wanted it to. So this is about checking in and saying, hey, let me just be a little bit more deliberate. And with some meetings, I get it. It might be just 2 to 3 minutes because you've done this one thousands of times. You know a lot about the account, but just even 2 to 3 minutes to slow down and think about, hey, what's my purpose of this meeting and what's the desired outcome? How will I know this is massively a successful meeting? And in some cases, it may require more robust planning. But number one, it's about having that attitude that this can go well. The other thing is attitude. Attitude, right? It's everything. So are we meeting with that account that sometimes is just, I'll call it difficult, right? They always seem to have a challenge, right? And that can really taint us a little bit like, oh boy, I'm going in to do this one again. I got to do it because they are a good account. They're spending money, but man, it just wears on me. Slow down and think about how can you make this meeting great. Don't let the past, poison the future, and think about how you can do that. Because remember, if we go into the attitude with good intentions and with the idea that this meeting can be the best one we've ever had, chances are, right, it's going to be a better meeting. The other basic things you're going to do is make sure you go and collect the resources, review the resources you need for the meeting so you've got the right collaterals, things like that. Pull the proper reports. Make sure you're looking at the numbers. And again, base your meeting and questions on some of the relevant, most timely information that you'll have. The other thing, and we'll talk more about this, but send an agenda prior to the meeting. And I realize this isn't always relevant, but I know when I send an agenda prior to a meeting, it makes me think about it at another level. It helps me get prepared as much as I'm helping that client to prepare for the meeting, so they are more prepared to share ideas. They know exactly what you're going to be talking about. And just by opening up that email and reading the agenda, you got them thinking. They're now beginning to think about the topics. And when you do ask questions, you're more likely to get someone who's engaged and who's less guarded. And oftentimes you're going to get even better information, and it will result with an even better solution. So some general things as it relates to pre-meeting preparation. I love things that trick me into top performing behavior. In the book Atomic Habits, they talk about these triggers, things that you attach to existing habits that you have. So, for example, if you're already going to be going out to do a meeting, how can you have a trigger, something that you can use to help you prepare for that meeting? In this case, we have a meeting prep template. It's a one-page document that could be used in a lot of different ways. I'd like you to review this prep template, but here's a couple of ideas on how you can use it. You'll see that this one, I've written in some commentary. I call it a job aid, right? It's some questions you might ask yourself that kind of can trigger some ideas as you prepare for a meeting. And if it's a really critical meeting and you really want to ensure that it goes well, maybe it's a newer customer, maybe a new contact at the customer, or a huge opportunity, you may set aside time to really use the prep template to prepare for that meeting. Maybe it's as long as 30 minutes. Maybe it's 45 minutes. You know the right time. Now, on the other hand, there are some meetings that, man, you've been doing this long enough. You have got your game together, and this is just about kind of before you run onto the field. Get the template out and glean through it. The part I suggest gleaning through is purpose and desired outcome. The two things right at the top. If you know where you're going, then you're more likely to guide your activities and actions towards that. So I think if you can have some clarity on that, that's a good way to kind of check yourself before you start a meeting. And then go back to purpose and make sure your purpose is 100% client centric. What we mean by that is it's topics that they'll want to talk about, that they'll be excited to jump into, like growing their business, maybe solving some problems, helping them have better patient experiences and outcomes, right? When we can really communicate verbally, the opening of a meeting that is super client-centric, they're going to be more engaged. They're not going to be looking at their watch or thinking like, hey, when are you going to leave, man? Or what are you going to, you're just here to try to sell me something? So the template is very versatile, and it's also great when you're working with a team of people. So maybe 2 or 3 of you, maybe you're going in with your regional, maybe it's your regional and your VP going in. This is a great tool to ensure that you're all synced up on the common purpose, desired outcome, who's going to cover what. But again, a better version of you, a better version of the ZO team is going to show up. And this is the template we put together with your feedback. If you have any additions, changes, refinements, let me know, because we like to live our motto, which is there's no limit to better. It can get better. So take a look at this. And there's also a blank version that you can use. Here's my advice on the blank version. Try it out right now. You're going to pause the video and look at a meeting you have on the calendar right now. Could be later today. It could be tomorrow, could be later this week. But choose one and put this into practice. And let's talk about how it goes. How has it helped you show up even better at that next meeting? So, I want you to stop the video. Do it right now. Come on, give me 5 minutes. Can you give me 5 minutes? I bet you're going to be glad you did it. All right, we'll see you on the other side. Thanks. So here's that blank one. Did you stop? Did you actually fill it out? If you haven't, I'm going to give you another chance. But I want you to just reflect after you've taken, and maybe you just set your cell phone, right? Give me 3 minutes. Just start at the top, 3 minutes. And when Siri says the timer's running off, stop. I'd like you to reflect in that moment and say, hey, am I glad I did this? What I've found is it's kind of like going to the gym. I may not feel like it when I first walk in, but man, when I walk out after a workout, I'm so glad I did it. I think the template is a lot like that. So, what do you say? Quick little 3-minute workout? Let's do this. Have you ever been asked to give your introduction and right after you gave it, or maybe even in the middle of it, you said to yourself, man, I wish I had a redo number on this. I wish it was like voicemail where I could press the button and say re-record. Well, giving an introduction really takes practice. It's kind of an art. And when we can deliver an exceptional, remarkable introduction, it can really make a big difference in business. Now, we're not asking every single meeting to do an introduction, especially if you're meeting with a client, month after month, week after week. It doesn't make sense. Obviously, grab this ingredient and use it when necessary. But one thing we do know is when you can nail your introduction, it can be super useful in building your credibility. And when your credibility is higher, you come across more professional. Their receptivity to your ideas, your questions are going to be much higher as well. So these are the steps or ingredients of a great client-centric introduction. When I say client-centric, that's because you're speaking, as it relates to when you sit down with a client. If you're doing an introduction with a group of colleagues, maybe they haven't met you before, they're your client, so make it relevant to them. So it's not so much one of those kind of traditional, hi, my name's Bob, I'm an account executive here at ZO, and my territory is Arkansas. That's kind of general information. We want to make sure our introduction is remarkable. So one of the techniques we share, and I'll share this communication technique here, is pace, pause, punch. So when we're verbally communicating, whether it's given a presentation, and this applies to virtual as well as in person, is we want to make sure we speak at the right pace. In fact, when you think about pacing, right? When someone speaks really fast, right? Most people think, oh, they're trying to sell me something, or that's nerves, right? So ideally, we want to slow our pace down. We want to be at a comfortable pace that draws in the client. But at the same time, you want to make sure your pace varies depending on what you're communicating and, how and etc. So pace shouldn't be one thing, but in fact, just be really careful that it's not too fast. Most people don't talk too slow. So watch your pace when you talk, especially giving your introduction. The next thing is pause. Add some deliberate pauses when you're speaking. And you may think about using pauses to fill in for those word fillers that you might use. Most people are familiar with ums and ahs. Have you fallen into that trap? I know I do. And when I'm not quite sure what I'm going to say, or if there's just a bit of silence, I get in the habit of adding and. What you want to do is, first of all, become aware of when you're doing it and replace it with a pause. In fact, you know what? It's going to enhance how you communicate. So use pauses specifically, and I'll reference it here when you introduce yourself, your name. And if you're using your first name and your last name, add a pause in the middle. So be careful you don't come across like this. Hi, my name's Bob Coakley. You notice how that was like meshed together? And what I found is if I'm speaking too quickly or I don't add a pause there, I don't know why, but people call me Paul. I get it all the time. Not as much recently because I'm using this. Okay, I'm eating my own cooking. But I get weird reactions. The other reason or indicator that you may not be coming across as clearly as possible is people don't use your name because they're not quite sure what it was, or you said it so quickly. So take that introduction and just be super deliberate with it. Hey, good morning. My name is Bob Coakley. So it's a way to kind of separate that. So you notice the pace and the pause there. And I actually added a punch. It's not a punch where it's going to blow your eardrums out. Good morning. My name is Bob. See a little punch there? Coakley. So a little punch there. So these are just some things you can think about as you verbally communicate. And it's probably even more important when you're working with people virtually, which we're doing a lot more these days. But using these techniques help you come across more clearly, and you're going to get more engagement from your audience. The last point I'll point here is make it remarkable. So I know I'll often say, "Hey, my name is Bob Coakley." A lot of my colleagues and friends call me Boston Bob because I'm from Boston. By the way, these are how words sound when they're pronounced properly. Need some quarters for the meter? How about a couple of beers? Right? So I grew up in Boston, right? So do you have a way people can remember your name, maybe a nickname or something like that? Don't make it, if you have something that's relevant, go ahead. You want to be authentic here, but that's what we mean by be remarkable. When people can remember your name, that goes a long way. All right, let me hit a couple other things here, but I'd like you to prepare a client-centric introduction for an upcoming meeting where it would be relevant. That could be within the company, maybe on a future Zoom call, maybe someone new is going to be on that call, or someone new is going to be in that meeting. Prepare your introduction. Use this next opportunity, maybe in the next day, 2 days, or this week, to do a client-centric introduction. After saying your name, you're going to share your role. It's how your role relates to them. And when we say role, that's beyond title. I'm an account executive here at Zio, and it's my role to help clients like you grow your business. Everything from marketing to help bringing new patients into your practice to helping you maximize patient experience by combining your services with the products we have, so your clients are super happy and they just keep coming back and they send your friends and more friends and more friends. That's my role. Next is what you know about the client. It sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but use this opportunity to share something you might have learned about them through the research you've done. And maybe that's like, "Hey, I noticed on your Facebook page." That's a subtle hint to them that, wow, this person did their homework. And do you like working with people that do their homework? A small one sentence lets them know you're a little bit different. It's subtle. And you're not doing it to show off. A great salesperson is just plain interested and curious about their customer. The other thing is pay a compliment. That could be something you've noticed about them or consistently notice. If you're going into dermatologist office, obviously with healthcare related stuff, people really value cleanliness. You might say, "Gosh, one thing I really, really admire about you all is your office is always so clean. I mean, looks pristine." And that's so important in this environment these days. I'm curious, what do you do to keep it so clean? I got to get your cleaning service and recommend it to some of my other customers. I'm not going to share their name, but pay them a compliment. "Oh my gosh, Bob, you always look so great, like a real pro. What's your dry cleaning bill?" Right? So subtle little things like that can really help build credibility with the client. Last thing is to share something personal. And if you've done a little bit of research, you may have found something that you guys have in common. Maybe they like hiking and that was on their LinkedIn profile. Maybe you saw that they did a certain event. Maybe it was around an animal or rescue type thing, a fundraiser, and you have pets and you're really fond of pets, and you've maybe done some of those things in the past, or maybe your dog's a rescue, right? So share with them so you have some type of connection, because when we're trying to do our introduction, but also in the build rapport step, we're trying to build both credibility and likability. Personal just helps them get to know you a little bit more on a personal level. And again, be appropriate. Don't do something inappropriate here, and whatever you're comfortable with. But we really encourage you, connect with them. And I'm certain most of your clients you're probably really connected with, and you know a lot about what they like to do personally, and they know a lot about you. And when you have that level of trust, it really helps doing business together go so much easier. It's just way more fun. Here's a couple of quick hits on building blocks of rapport. You might just kind of use these to reinforce some of the things you're already doing, or it might trigger some things you'd want to do. But create an exceptional, remarkable introduction. My challenge, use this sheet, write it out, and use it on your next appointment or the next appointment and or meeting you have where it would be relevant. Be prepared with your introduction. I bet you're going to say after that meeting, I'm glad I really did that. I'm going to do that more often. So take some time, pause the video right now, create your personal introduction for an upcoming meeting where it would be relevant for you to share something about you and yourself. So what caught your attention in this module? What in this module is going to help a better version of you show up in your meetings? What's something you're committed to doing and putting into practice? So take a moment, fill out this page, and be sure to add this to your Google form to let us know what is connecting with you. As well, use these topics and have a conversation with your coach, your field trainer, and make it even better. Finally, if you're reviewing this video and you can give us some feedback on additional things that might be relevant, useful to put in here as it relates to pre-meeting planning, please let us know and we'll add it in here to make it even better. Thanks again.